Yeah. So the results of the first round were, well, from our last episode, we were pretty goddamn wrong.
Yeah,
We weren't even close. So
we weren't even close.
that's why we're not insiders. But
Not
I
yet.
think it went as expected. Just kind of talking about the first pick, probably over the past 3 months or so, everyone thought it was going to be Aiden Hutchinson going to the
Mhm.
Jags, and then what was it like? I don't know if you want to kind of explain a little bit what the switch up was, but about a week or two before the draft started, the lines completely jumped to Trayvon Walker being the first pick, and sure enough, he was.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I mean, we talked about it a little bit. I actually said the wrong guy. Um, I said Randy Gregory, I think, and I meant to say Alden Smith. But the GM of the Jaguars, Trent Baalke, has a history of drafting guys like that who are just like athletic freaks, and we touched on it a little bit. But he prefers to get like athletic freaks and hope that like the intangibles, translate to the next level. What was so interesting is, yeah, I feel like that Trayvon Walker was a lesser known guy at Georgia. He's still obviously an incredible defender, but he was a lesser known guy. He didn't really have much production, and then all of a sudden, like Peter Schrager from Good Morning Football came out with his mock, and that's when it kind of picked up a little bit of steam. He's just like, I heard rumblings that Trayvon Walker is going to go one. Obviously, Aiden Hutchinson seemed like the consensus since in the collegiate season he was the most dominant, but it's really weird that that Trayvon Walker was just so quick to slide ahead of him with, like you said, within like a 2 week span. It's so weird. Um,
Yeah, when you pick someone goes first overall, you would like to think there's someone who's going to make a big impact in the league. I don't know about right away, but you just look at the past first round picks, and sure
mhm.
enough, the Jags got the first pick 2 years in a row, and they go with Trevor Lawrence, and he didn't really do much last year. He's
Yeah,
got a lot of room to improve, but he didn't really make that impact that they were looking for. Can't really. I don't know if you want to point the finger at Trevor or if you want to point the finger at just the Jags being a terrible football team, but they're
yeah,
a team that's kind of relying on over these next several years stinking. I don't know if tanking's the right word, but just not being a good football team, racking up these first round picks, and 5-10 years from now, hoping they're going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars that they were. What was it, 5 years ago or so when they went to the AFC Championship game
mhm.
and lost to the Patriots? I believe that was the same year the Philadelphia Eagles of Philadelphia won the Super Bowl. Just to remind you, but
Where are they from?
but that's just kind of what the Jags are in right now. They're in rebuilding mode, and Trayvon Walker was an absolute beast at Georgia, and hopefully he can bring that spark to the Jags defense that they need because they have a pretty solid defense, a pretty solid foundation as it is. So
Yeah, it was. I think it was just kind of surprising. Leading up to the draft, the odds completely shifted, where Trayvon Walker was then favored, and um, so you had to understand that probably a lot of people were hearing the same things. But something that was crazy, I thought about the first round, and maybe we could just talk about some things that surprised you. Like something that surprised me was the quarterbacks. Like something that we all got wrong collectively. I feel like was
yeah, they were
just the
just
slide. Like
non-existent in the first round at all.
first two rounds. Yeah, there was just the one with Kenny Pickett to the Steelers, and I felt really confident that just like last year, like Najee Harris was basically guaranteed to be a Steeler. I was like, oh, they kind of suck. I keeping that in. Malik Willis is going to be a Steeler. Sure enough, he slides to the end of round 3 to the Titans. Um, it's really kind of interesting. I just thought that he had a lot of promise, at least in his intangibles, and he was mocked as high as number 2 to the Lions. And it's just the catastrophic fall of, these quarterbacks was pretty crazy to me, I thought.
Yeah, they definitely slipped. I always had a feeling. I know in our mock draft, I don't think we sent we had Pickett probably going in the top 15. I think we had him going to Atlanta or something, and
Hmm.
sure enough, he goes to Pittsburgh, and I was honestly just so happy to see that. I think that was the most exciting part of the draft,
Yeah.
just knowing that he'll stay at home in Pittsburgh and he's going to a good football team. Mike Tomlin, um, that stat about how he's made the playoffs every year in his career. Is it something like that, or
It's he's never had a losing
he's
season.
never had a losing
Thank you.
season? Correct. Thanks for correcting me on that. But just putting Kenny Pickett in that type of offense, and I think he's gonna do great things for them. They might not be a playoff team just because of how tough that division is going to be with the Bengals and the Ravens, but I think he'll be just fine in Pittsburgh,
What do
especially
you
because he
think?
knows that field quite well.
Yeah, what's kind of cool about Kenny Pickett too is I didn't realize that it's like quite literally the same facility. You just take a door to the left, and it's the
Hmm.
Steelers, and a door to the right, or I think it might be the other way around, is the University of Pitt. But what do you make of the other quarterbacks? So you had like, and you had besides from Malik Willis, who we kind of briefly touched on, Matt Corral was mocked to go in the first round, and you also had Desmond Ritter, who was like sliding up boards, and Desmond Ritter was the second quarterback taken to the Falcons, but I think also in the middle of the third round. What do you make of that slide? Do you think that it's more of like everyone kind of as a consensus realized that these quarterbacks aren't as good, or do you think it's that the NFL is kind of maybe the evaluators are kind of learning that I always think back to the Giants, obviously, in terms of like the difference in the quarterbacks that they've taken over the years. Kyle Lauletta was a fourth round pick. Davis Webb, I think, was also a fourth round pick. And it's ultimately, like I always thought, just kind of a waste where you could be using that for like, it's pretty valuable draft capital. What do you make of that slide that these quarterbacks take? And is that kind of a realization from evaluators? Maybe there's value elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not as fluent in college football as you are, but from what I do know, there's been a lot of talk just about next year's class having really strong quarterbacks, and
Mm.
there are several teams right now that are kind of on their last legs with their quarterback. For example, you look at the Titans. Ryan Tannehill has been very good for them, but he is getting older, and they needed someone to, have that backup role filled. And Malik Willis was the guy for that. I was kind of hesitant on him at first, just coming out of Liberty. He has a lot of talent, but I didn't look at him as being someone who's going to be an immediate, a quarterback who's going to make an immediate impact in the league. If you want to compare him to someone like Jalen Hurts, for example, he has a lot of talent, but
Mm.
hasn't really made, what is this going to be his third season? He hasn't really made that impact yet. Malik Willis could be very similar to that, but there just weren't that many options in my opinion. I know Matt Corral was one of the top three choices, and I think there are some rumors of him having some off-field issues potentially. I don't know the exact
Mm.
reasons, but he slipped a lot because of that. Ritter slipped, and I just don't think when you have a first, second, and maybe even a third round pick, you want to be confident that whoever you're taking is going to make an impact coming into the season for you guys, even if they are just a young rookie. That's why draft picks are so valuable, and people and teams have been trading them like crazy
Mm.
because they're so important to the future of your team, and you need to be so careful with who you pick. And um, as I know, as an Eagles fan, our picks have not always been so great over the years. I don't know if you have any disappointing picks that the Giants have made over the years, but it just goes to show how important the draft is, and you really want to be smart with your picks. And if you're not a positive that one of these quarterbacks in this draft are gonna be a long-term stud for you, it's not worth
Mhm.
taking that risk, in my opinion.
So what was the most surprising thing ultimately? Like as an overarching, besides from the quarterbacks, was there one thing in the first round, maybe a player, maybe a trade that was made that surprised you? Because there was a few things I thought that were like out of nowhere.
Yeah, there are definitely a couple. I don't know if this is true or not, but this could be the first draft ever where two cornerbacks went back to back. Um, we got this wrong. I think we had Sauce Gardner going third to the Texans, but it ended up being Derek Stingley. And you actually predicted that right on the money because you talked about how just coming out of LSU, all the experience he had guarding Jamar Chase, guarding Justin Jefferson. Um, I don't know a whole lot about Stingley, but from the film I've watched of him, he's a stud. And it's tough when you're a good player because you get drafted to a bad
Yeah,
team, and doesn't matter how good you are. If you're on a bad team, sometimes there's only so much you can do. But that was
right.
kind of surprising to me, honestly, that Stingley went over
Sauce.
Sauce, and then Sauce went back to back, going to the Jets. The Jets absolutely killed this draft. They did an excellent job. But that was something that kind of caught my mind, was just cornerbacks going third and fourth right off the bat. I don't know if there were any other choices that the Texans and Jets, who are two other teams who are in the rebuilding process, could have taken maybe one of those offensive tackles in Okonru or Evan Neal, but they took their shot, and on the secondary side of things, hopefully Stingley and Gardner turn out well for them. Unlike, I guess the last example was Jeff Okudah.
Oh yeah. Yeah, Jeff Okudah has not performed well since coming out of Ohio State, whatever it was, 3 years ago now, maybe 4. No, it was 3.
Something like that. 3.
Not around. Yeah, that's a good one though. I think, and we'll get to this in a little bit in terms of winners and losers, but I think what interested me the most was how there was so much fire there was a lot of smoke around the Debo news and how he wanted to get out and whatever. And supposedly the 49ers actually had multiple offers with the Jets number 10 pick plus more. And they also apparently had, I don't know if it was the number 2 pick, but they had a Lions first round pick offered to them plus, and they didn't pull the trigger. I thought that was surprising because then you have AJ Brown who gets traded to the Eagles for virtually nothing. And the Cardinals, who must have seen the DeAndre Hopkins news coming, they had to have to make that deal and get Hollywood Brown and reunite college teammates from Oklahoma. I thought that was pretty interesting as well. Those are probably the two that stand out to me the most. But I mean, you can't discount how weird it was that a guy who has no production in college at all, I think it was 6.5 sacks throughout his entire collegiate career as part due to the scheme, but 6.5 sacks compared to 14 from Aiden Hutchinson, who was a Heisman finalist. I think it's a pretty interesting kind of dynamic there. So moving on to our next topic, I think this one is going to really hit home for us. Let me just put this baby back on. This hat is so sun-kissed.
That's pretty old. There's a lot of dust on it when you picked it out of your grandfather's closet.
Good one.
Got him.
My grandpa's in Florida. Joke's on you. Let's go over the Eagles and the Giants draft classes from this year. Do you want to start us off and just talk a little bit about the Eagles draft class, and then I'll chime in a little bit as well. But you, as the Eagles fans, I feel like you should start. Are you wearing a Chicago White Sox?
You got it right on the money, man.
What? Why are you wearing a Chicago White Sox hat?
There's a long story behind it. I don't really feel like getting into, but if you really care, I'll tell you about it some other time. But getting to the Eagles, when the draft was going on, I wasn't paying as much attention as I should have been, just because, for good reason, the Sixers were in their game 6, so I was heavily focused on that. I had the draft on in the background, but when I saw that they traded up to 13 with the Texans, my first thought immediately was they're trying to get Jameson Williams. They don't want him to slip. And then 12 comes around to the Lions and they take him. So I was thinking to myself, if he wasn't taken, I'm wondering if the Eagles would have taken Jameson Williams.
I don't think he was 13. The Eagles stayed at 15. No, they stayed at 15. They stayed at 15.
No, it was 13. They traded up to 13 with the Texans, and Howie Roseman, the GM, said they were trading up to 13 to take JD Davis, I believe his name is. Jordan Davis, I apologize. Jordan Davis out of Georgia, which is a great pick. He was an absolute stud at Georgia, and
yeah, you're right.
They definitely needed help at the tackle position. So Jordan Davis, I think, was a great pick. And then they had another pick at 15 that they traded with the Texans. But obviously, Jordan Davis was a great pick. And then just the shocking news of it was, I believe after they took Davis, I was like, all right, I saw the pick. I'm going to go get some ice cream. Went to get some ice cream because it was a beautiful night out. And on my walk back, I had like my ice cream in one hand and then my phone's like blowing up in the other. Like my dad, some friends and family are calling me, and I'm like, what's going on? Like, what's the big deal? The Sixers already kind of wrapped up the game. The Eagles got their draft pick. What are you possibly calling me about? And they're like, we just got AJ Brown. And I was like, that was mind blowing to me, just because of all the talk, how he took the Titans out of their his Twitter bio, And then later on, there's Mike Rabel talked about how that he's not letting go of AJ Brown ever. And then, sure enough, you see the video of Mike Rabel very pissed off that he was traded away for what, 2 draft picks for someone of AJ Brown's caliber who's that good. I can't believe that the Titans did that. It made zero sense to me. I get that the Titans got Robert Woods, but I don't get how you can get rid of somebody as good as AJ Brown. And the Eagles just gave him a lot of money. I think it's like $100 million for 4 years, something like that. But nonetheless, it's a lot of money for a great player, and I just hope Jalen Hurts can throw him the football. The Eagles got a tight end, they got a center, they got Nakobe Dean, which you and I were talking about that. We can't believe that he fell to the 3rd round, which was unbelievable. But I know he had some injuries, maybe some off-field stuff as well, but probably one of the best draft classes and just trade acquisitions that the Eagles have done in a long time.
Yeah, I think so. For the Eagles, obviously this draft was a major win. I was the one, unfortunately, who broke the news in our apartment in New York about the AJ Brown trade. I could not believe my eyes. AJ Brown's probably one of my favorite young receivers, talents, players in this entire league. He goes to my most hated team possible. They stole him, I think. They got him for the 18th pick, which ended up being used to draft his replacement, Treylon Burks, which is, not the same. And I think a 3rd round pick as well. The Titans make no sense. Like, I don't understand their direction. They're a competing team. Why would you get rid of, 24-year-old stud who's one of the best in the league? You pay that man. Like, Christian Kirk got paid not much less than him, So I just thought that was a huge win for the Eagles and Howie Roseman.
They absolutely fleeced the Saints with that trade, as well as the Carson Wentz move paid off for us with AJ Brown big time.
Yeah, we'll get into the Saints, because I actually broke it down later on in our show of exactly what they traded to end up trading up for Olave, which is a crazy amount. But yeah, going back to the Eagles. So the Eagles just they got everything they needed. They got Fletcher Cox's replacement. I didn't love the pick there. I thought Jordan David, but they knew that the Ravens were going to take him, so they had to do that. They got a center. They had Jason Kelce scouting for them, so they got his eventual success.
Yeah, well. The only other person I think they would have taken if they didn't take Davis would have been Kyle Hamilton.
Right. That was also an interesting fall. That Kyle. Also, I don't know. I just saw a thing on this. Kyle Hamilton wears number 14, went pick 14, and is wearing 14 again for the Ravens. Kind of interesting. Yeah. They could have gotten maybe the steal of the draft, Nakobe Dean. We'll see. There are obviously a lot of injury concerns. He was taken off a lot of people's boards. There's a reason he was falling that far, but they could potentially have gotten the steal of the draft in a position of need. What I thought was so funny about the Eagles is how he finally figured out, he sucks at drafting receivers and he's a wizard at trades. So why not just combine the talents and trade for a receiver? And, it worked out masterfully for them.
Yeah.
I was really impressed with this draft. They probably had one of the best drafts of any team, which absolutely I hate to say. And they also fleeced the Saints. It's not even close. Another one. I guess moving on to my teams, the Giants. And I'll talk a little bit about them. I think they were arguably one of the biggest winners as well, especially from night one. Night one could not have fallen more perfectly for them, getting Kayvon Thibodeau and then having one of the 2 top tackles fall into their lap. And they got Evan Neal, who had some experience at right tackle as well. So they got two guys who were rated number 1 at different points. So I love that trade. Love Kayvon Thibodeau. I would hate him if he wasn't a Giant. He just kind of has that really cocky personality that you don't love unless he's on your team. And then Evan Neal, I'm just really excited for. We have 2 bookend tackles. O-line has always been a problem, and Gettleman screwed us for years. So I really love this draft for them. I think that they may have reached on Wan'Dale Robinson, but they made 2 really good trades. in order to move back for him. He's dynamic. What I thought was kind of crazy. So he's like 5'8". He's not the biggest guy by any means. He's definitely a gadget player. He's at Nebraska and then moved on to Kentucky his final year, where he played awesome. What's kind of interesting is some people think that there's a correlation between drafting him and maybe the Kadarius Toney news, that they'll kind of similar redundant players. Maybe they'll get rid of Kadarius Toney. I think it's that they just want more guys that can be used in motion. Like you think about the old Chiefs offense, the Bills offense. They had Isaiah McKenzie, Tyreek Hill moving within space and in the backfield. I think he's just super dynamic, and he also benched 19 reps of 225, which I thought was crazy for how small he is. It's insane. So I love this. I kind of came around on him. The other guys, they got some.
He's not someone you're throwing the ball up to in the end zone. Let's just leave it at that.
No, he's not.
He's your Tyreek Hill slant receiver, most likely.
Yeah. But I think that's a need. Like, they were just ultimately, the Giants did a great job in just upgrading the offensive line. They drafted 3 O-linemen in this draft, and we'll see. They drafted a tight end that's pretty solid, Daniel Bellinger, and I'm excited about these guys. I think it's finally a step in the right direction. And I love how also I trust Joe Shane, and I love that he purposefully leaked. We talked about it on our show last week that Charles Cross was being leaked everywhere, that he was going to be the Giants pick. And we found out that the reason he was leaked was to see if Chris Pettit, who's like the lead director of scouting for the Giants for years, if he would tell people. It got leaked everywhere over social media and all over the news outlets and everything. And he was fired yesterday morning, which was fantastic. Love that. So glad that this regime has full power. What did you think of the Giants draft?
I think the Giants did a really good job. Evan Neal is a great pick, assuming he's going to come back and be healthy. But that's kind of their main thing right there, is just getting protection for Daniel Jones, and you need to get protection for Saquon, but that's a much bigger issue with his health and him just being able to stay healthy. But they did a really good job, and Thibodeau is a beast. I wanted him to fall to the Eagles, but I knew that wasn't going to happen. So it was a snag, and Giants have a pretty exciting young core of defenders coming into the season. So hopefully they can try and make a step in the right direction come the season.
We'll have to see with Daniel Jones too and Saquon. These are obviously pivotal years for them both. I think that this O-line, and they don't have any more excuses. Like, that's the ultimate end goal. Like, the 2 top receivers didn't have a touchdown last year. They needed to upgrade the O-line for sure, give Daniel Jones a little bit of time, but now they can see what they have. And if he doesn't get the job done, that's okay. And then they have a really solid O-line, or they're working on it, in order to maybe draft a successor next year.